Welcome back to another episode of the Return of the Roar Sacramento Kings podcast on Sactown Sports 1140. My name is Brenden Nunes. Got Frankie Cartoscelli here as we usually do. What's going on, Frank? How you feeling, man?
Brenden, everyone listening, good to be back, man. Been a couple weeks, and we've had a couple Kings games to kind of work through and kind of formulate some thoughts here and dive into it. Obviously, last night Miami, just a really exciting game and interesting, scheduling by the NBA too, which I think is pretty cool. How they staggered every game 15 minutes apart, which I think was great from an entertainment standpoint, especially if you have League Pass, which I'm sure you were dabbling in the other games as well. I had an iPad on the side and just kind of watching a lot of close games last night, but the Kings were one of, or maybe even arguably the best game last night. But good to be back, and let's talk about this 4-3 start. I'm sure everyone that was having those very negative thoughts after an 0-2 start, hopefully he's feeling a little better after last night. But I'm sure there are a lot of topics we have to touch on today.
Absolutely. We have not spoken since the Kings started their season, and they're currently sitting at 4-3. You kind of mentioned it there, but 0-2 start against the Minnesota Timberwolves and Los Angeles Lakers, I think had people a little bit concerned. But since then, it's been 4-1 for the Kings, including a 3-1 road trip where they went to Utah and then a back-to-back in Atlanta and Toronto that I think was a topic of conversation. I was also shocked to find out that it's just a little over a 2-hour flight from Atlanta to Toronto, and that kind of calmed everything down for me. I was like, actually, this isn't that crazy, right?
Yeah, I saw Deuce was getting a lot of flack for
his arrows.
His arrows, the way he pointed at, I guess he didn't point to the correct area where Toronto is in Canada. He just pointed to the general area of the country. But I mean, whether it's 2.5 hours or not, just geographically, it doesn't make any sense when you're right next to Miami.
Right.
You're in Atlanta, you're pretty close to Miami, and you're going to go to Canada, have to go through customs on a back-to-back, land at 3 a.m. I think the guys got there at 3:30 a.m. that morning, and that's the only game they lost on the road trip. Is that the reason why? No, I don't think so. I mean, they had plenty of chances to beat Toronto, but the scheduling didn't help them at all. And that's kind of one of the rare ones that you don't see very often, I guess. Not, at least one that hasn't stuck out to that point over the past couple of seasons. But I know that De'Aaron and a couple other players had some comments about it, and they were kind of like, "This is stupid." And I don't blame them. I mean, I think playing a back to back and having to fly to another country and go through customs, all those things definitely isn't ideal. But I mean, we're sitting here, this Kings team after a four game road trip, 3-1, and the one game they lost was in overtime in Toronto on the second night of that back to back. So all things considered, a very successful road trip. And I think a lot of people and fans, and I'm not sure you're feeling, but feeling a lot more optimistic, or maybe those concerns that we had after that 0-2 start have been alleviated a little bit, because this team definitely looks like they're going to be fine. I'm not sure if you feel the same way, but I think that I wasn't personally sounding the alarm after an 0-2 start. They played Minnesota pretty close. They played the Lakers pretty tight. I mean, those are two teams that have been playing some good basketball so far. So I don't know how you feel, but I think that this road trip definitely makes me feel like this team's going to be where a lot of us expect them to be.
I think the same. The Toronto one does feel weird because, to be blunt, the Raptors suck this year. And RJ Barrett looks like he's taken another step in his game for what it's worth. I think Grady Dick is the same, falls into the same category, but they were without a couple guys, including Scotty Barnes, Bruce Brown. Their defense, just not very good. And I think the Kings should have been able to put up more points, but I do somewhat give them a pass for what you mentioned, a weird back-to-back. I also think that the 28, I believe, minute was halftime with Vince Carter getting his jersey retired. Even from a viewer perspective, I would imagine most people felt it. It was just weird. And to have to go back out there after that is an interesting circumstance. Now, obviously, both teams had to deal with it, but I'll take it. You went to overtime. DeRozan played great in that overtime, by the way. He scored all of their points. And I really thought we were set up for a storybook moment where he was going to hit a game winner in Toronto, which obviously did not end up taking place. But in Miami, there's a game winner for the Kings, obviously. Domas gets that putback. And I think a way to start here is DeRozan obviously being the big addition to the team. We're 7 games in now, just above 500. How do you feel like he has molded in with this group? He's the leading scorer so far, and personally, I feel like there's moments where we really have a stretch, and you saw it last night against Miami where he hits a jumper, he hits a nice like fake jumper pass to Domas late in the game, and then a 4-point play where he ends up passing Charles Barkley for 29th on the all-time scoring list. But there's stretches where it's just like, this is really DeMar DeRozan just doing whatever he wants out here. But how have you felt like he's fit into this group?
I mean, the difference in late game execution is compared to last year is really just night and day. And I think when you look at that, that's not really a knock on Harrison Barnes. They're very different players. And I mean, even Harrison Barnes back in his Dallas days when he was getting high volume of shots and he was their number one option, he was never the type of ISO scorer or self-creator that DeMar DeRozan is. And factoring in the fact, that DeMar DeRozan is not just a self-creator. Like you said, he's able to create for teammates and make that smart pass, 5 assists per game last year. Just seeing the Kings, who I think that we said it a lot last year, De'Aaron Fox was their point of attack all the time in those situations, and Malik Monk had his moments too. But having a player that you can kind of say, okay, you need a bucket getter in those late game scenarios where you need to stop the bleeding or it's a back and forth situation. And the Heat have that in Jimmy Butler, who was making tough shots. DeMar DeRozan in Toronto and in Miami, pulling up in transition, one-on-one turnarounds. I mean, these are shots that not many people in the NBA can make, and he makes it look so easy. And the crazy thing is, whenever the ball leaves his hands late in these late game situations, it's almost like you expect him to go in, and they most of the time do. Right now, he's ranked 6th in fourth quarter scoring to begin the year. He scored 57 points in the fourth quarter this year. This is a guy who was runner-up in clutch player of the year, and now you have 2 players late in games, 3 if you count Malik Monk, who's had his clutch moments too, and he was big for them in spurts last night too. It really just changes the identity of this team, especially when you have to look at opposing defenses who usually don't have more than 2 high-level impact defenders. You have to defend DeMar DeRozan, De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk. Keegan Murray can hurt you on offense too if he's having a good night. And then Sabonis, we saw last night what can happen when he doesn't give up on a play, which he never does. So I think having a 25-point per game scorer like DeRozan added into this lineup, a lot of people had their reservations about how the ball will be moved around and how De'Aaron Fox will be able to get his touches too. But so far, I mean, I haven't seen many concerns in that end. The defense, 3-point defense, has been more of an Achilles heel for this team than their offense. They're a top 6 offense right now. And I think DeMar DeRozan is a huge reason why.
Absolutely. 5th in offensive rating. I think their ability to get to the free throw line is just through the roof. I mean, obviously, it's what DeRozan does well. There's always jokes that other teams have. I'm forgetting the term, but like you have to pay money if you fall for a pump fake on DeRozan. It's just known this is what this guy does. And the Kings have other guys that are good at it as well, but they're going in as well this year, which is just kind of funny because obviously it was a little infamous last year that the Kings couldn't make their free throws. This year, they're first in the league, 83.5%. They were dead last year. And I had the thought the other day of how much these guys must enjoy that we're just not even asking about it anymore, or laughing at the fact that like we ask when they suck, but we're not asking when they're great. But it's more than what you're supposed to do, obviously leading the league, but it's different. And if you go game by game, this is free throw attempts, 35, 25, 25, there's a 14, then 30, 32, and then 15 last night in Miami. But they're getting to the line a ridiculous amount. DeRozan leads the charge there, 7.6 a game, but Domas 5.7 and De'Aaron 5 as well. Keegan also getting to 2 a game, about doubling where he was last year, a little more aggressive, I think, getting to the paint. But they're knocking down their free throws and getting there a lot.
When you look at too, I mean, and it, like you said, it was really, I think, exhausting for those guys last year to have to answer question after question from all of us media about free throw shooting, because they really had just a simple answer of, I mean, they're just not falling. And why? Whether it was mental, a lot of people on Twitter will be saying these guys need to get a sports psychologist. And it's like, okay, well, maybe, but at the same time, they have the talent to do it. But you add DeMar DeRozan, who's one of the best free throw shooters the game has seen, and it speaks for itself. I don't think it's coincidence that they're number 1 in the league right now. But also, the other side of the coin, you look at Miami was in the same boat the Kings were in a lot of the times last year. They lost the game by 1 point last night. They went 21 of 30 from the free throw line. And just going through my Twitter feed last night, saw a couple Heat posts, and people were just, it was like a mirror image of last year. People were just just so devastated by the free throw shooting last night.
Well, Jimmy missed some huge ones, right? I think he only missed 2 on the night, and they were back-to-back big ones,
Yeah,
like
Jimmy missed 3.
3.
In the fourth quarter, I can tap on this right here and see what the fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter, Kings didn't take many free throws, but the Heat in the fourth quarter last night went 7 of 12, 58%.
Oh
Jimmy
my
went 2 of 4. Bam Adebayo missed 2 free throws. I mean, there's your game. And that happened to the Kings countless times last year. We're
Yep.
talking about a team that missed the playoffs by 1 game. And I don't think it can be understated how important free throw shooting is. And I think Dallas last year finished near the end of the league, and they might have been an outlier. But most teams that are in the mix for the postseason or beyond, they knock down their free throws, and especially when it matters. DeMar DeRozan is a guy who's going to do that every single time.
Yeah, I think another important aspect of this is the starting lineup and depth conversation, which I think somewhat go hand in hand. Mike Brown has been pretty transparent early in the year that he was still trying to, as he would say a lot, like wrap his hands around this group and get a good feel for the rotation. He said before the game in Miami that he's kind of at that point where he has a decent understanding of this group, and it seems like we're dealing with an 8, sometimes 9-man rotation. And these last, I guess, to go down that line when healthy, excluding Devin Carter, because we don't know where he may fit in when he's eventually healthy, which with a mid-January timeline. But you're talking De'Aaron Fox, Kevin Huerter, DeMar DeRozan, Keegan Murray, Domantas Sabonis, and then you're talking Malik Monk, Keon Ellis, and Trey Lyles. After that, it's kind of TBD. Sometimes you'll see Jordan McLaughlin. Sometimes you will see Alex Len. And recently, last 2 games, Kevin Huerter was out with an illness. You saw Doug McDermott fill into that starting lineup, which is kind of typical Mike Brown. Let's fill somebody that doesn't play that much. That way we're not messing with everybody else's typical rotation when they may check in the game, their typical minutes and things like that. And then against Miami, all right, fine, let's just roll out Keon Ellis, which honestly kind of seemed like it made sense in the first place because Keon started a good handful of games to close out the last season. But what have you thought of the 8-9-man rotation roughly from Mike Brown? And do you have some concerns that, that's not the deepest team for dealing with injuries throughout the year?
Yeah, I do think if we're talking about like a 1 game, if you're looking at it as can the Sacramento Kings win this game? I feel good about the Kings on mostly any given night because their talent 1 through 8 is really, really good. They're starting 5 in particular, very good. When you look at Malik Monk, how he factors in, even better. But over the course of an 82-game season, I do have some concerns because they're very, very thin. And I think entering play last night, they had 4 players in the top 11 in minutes per game. That's not sustainable, having guys play nearly 40 minutes per game. It just isn't sustainable. Especially when you look at guys like De'Aaron Fox and DeMar DeRozan, who I think DeRozan, you might feel a little more confident. He's been a workhorse throughout his 15-year career, but 35 years old, and you want to make sure you protect, your top 2 scoring options. If you have to lose either one of those guys for an extended period, and don't even get me started on Domantas Sabonis. If the Sacramento Kings in the Domantas Sabonis era, if that's what you want to call it, haven't had to really experience a spurt where Sabonis is out for an extended period. I think he missed 2 or 3 games year before last year. I think he played all 82 all 82 last year and then missed 2 or 3 year before, 1 for illness, 2 because of his hand.
Which was a broken finger, by the way. He missed 2 games and played through the rest of it.
2 games. And yeah. I do think the Kings are going to have to address it at some point, whether it's by trade or whether it's by I don't think it's going to be the Juan Toscano Anderson 10-day contract type, throw a Band-Aid on it. They're going to have to bring in somebody that's maybe not a starting caliber player, like a difference maker, but someone that can shore up your defense, whether it's a center or a power forward, because Trey Lyles can do his job and the Kings can feel confident rolling him out there. But, if Jalen McDaniels was still on the roster and can be even a plus, just someone with that body type or that size is someone the Kings could probably target. And, I know that there's people out there like the Dorian Finney-Smiths and the Cam Johnsons, and those players could be available if Brooklyn starts to kind of bottom out. But the Kings do have assets. They have resources. They can address it down the line, but you just want to hope that the health holds up. And to me, that's the biggest indicator of this team's success. It's going to be their health. As many teams in the NBA, sure, but a lot of other teams in the league maybe are definitely more deep than the Kings. And I think it's hard to find a lot of teams that have more talent 1 through 6 than the Kings do. But I think what makes the teams that are at the top of each conference so great is the fact that they're not just deep 1 through 6, they're deep 1 through 10. maybe even more in some situations. But concerned, it's early, so I'm kind of like on it right now. I'm not sure how you feel, but it just seems like to me that this roster that's constructed right now isn't going to be exactly the same come February. And I'm not saying they're going to move big impact players, but I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel like the 1 through 8 in this rotation, 1 through 9 is going to look a little bit different come February.
It's interesting. Honestly, I don't know that I had thought that far ahead. I have consistently had the thought that when Devin Carter comes back, and there seems to be a lot of variance on if that could even be this year, to be honest. Just mainly talking to different people that have their thoughts on it. But if it is this year, it's a mid-January timeline right now for reevaluation. We've seen him getting shots up right now. Now, that's an early step in the process still. There's still plenty of room before he eventually gets to full contact and things like that. But I think when Devin eventually returns, that's when your guard log jam really becomes present in my mind. And I think that's when we start to have the Kevin Huerter conversation once again, who, by the way, I think has been really good for the Kings for what it's worth. I think it's just kind of the nature of how this roster is built. But right now, I agree with you. I think the 8-9 that they have makes me feel good on most nights. And I think it's just a weakness of this current team, and they have future flexibility to still go make an improvement at the 3 or the 4 where there's a lot of depth issues. I mean, Keegan Murray, who I'm curious to get your opinions on, he hasn't been shooting great. He's 30% from 3. I've seen more people talk about the fact that he's not hitting threes than the fact that he's guarding the best player on the other team every single night, I feel like. And it does not matter their position. It could be Anthony Edwards. It could be LeBron James. It's been, I want to say he was the one on Lauri Markkanen, and you see him on Jalen Johnson. You see him on Jimmy Butler last night. He's all over the place defensively and has the best plus minus on the team. Their worst plus minus off the floor is when Keegan is sitting because he feels so irreplaceable on this team. But like I mentioned, obviously a little bit of a slow offensive start, which was the case last year as well. And I think questions start to creep up of, was year one an outlier? We're very early in this season, and I think that could be prefaced throughout this entire episode, 7 games into a season. But how have you felt about the growth on the defensive end from Keegan, but also a little bit of a slow offensive start?
Yeah, I think the defense has been just what makes him so valuable to this team. And especially at a time where the shots aren't falling. And like you said, I mean, he's 30% from 3 right now. And that's on the back of last year, which he shot 35%. His rookie year, he breaks a rookie record for most 3-pointers made. Was that maybe a overachieving season? I mean, maybe. We'll see. I think on the pod with Matt, my prediction was he was going to make 253s, which isn't off to a great start right now. But I think that Keegan Murray becoming a two-way player, which has been important to him. He talked about it a lot at the end of his rookie year. Last year, he was arguably, behind De'Aaron Fox, the Kings' second best defender. Keon Ellis actually maybe has an argument for that, even though he came on late in the year. But he really has been that presence for the Kings, and not just on the on-ball aspect. He's been hitting the defensive glass, 7.7 rebounds per game right now. That's like nearly his Iowa production on the glass, and that's someone who really didn't rebound at a high level. He went 4.6 rookie year, 5.5 last year, 7.7. It's very early. Is he going to average 7 to 8 rebounds for the whole season this year? Hard to say. I think that he kind of, I don't want to say has to, but now that Harrison Barnes is gone, who really kind of rebounded less near the end of his Kings tenure anyway, but we just talked about how the Kings are lacking size. Domantas Sabonis is the best rebounder in the game. I mean, he's at 13.6 right now, but the Kings are 20th in the NBA in rebounding right now. They need more help in that regard. They need players that are out there to crash. They need players that are in the forward spots, DeMar DeRozan, Keegan Murray, Trey Lyles, really to be a presence and to challenge, opposing teams in that aspect. And he's been doing it. So if he can't knock down the 3, it's kind of like the issue with, and I'm not comparing Keegan Murray to Buddy Hield, but I'm saying that a spot up or a sharpshooting type player, if you can't provide the offense, you have to provide something else. And Keegan Murray has shown flashes in self-creation, shooting, the midi, turnaround jumpers, seeing the floater. We've been seeing things from him that have been kind of developing the past season plus. But if the 3 isn't going to fall, you have to provide something else. You can't just be offense only. And there's a couple players, I guess, on the Kings that are like that. Kevin Huerter, someone who we've talked about at length, how he has to provide more than just 3-point shooting. He's been doing that. I think he really want to give him a little bit of credit early, but he hasn't as much of a black hole on defense. So Keegan right now, providing the defense, hitting the glass, knocking down shots. Last night he had a couple big moments. The 3-point shot I think will come around, but I think when we're looking at it as the totality of a player in Keegan Murray, being able to be that kind of defender, I think is what's going to make him very valuable, and it's what's going to make him get the next contract, which I think is going to be a big contract after his rookie skill deal's done. That's the kind of player he's growing into, a two-way threat, and that's the kind of player the Kings have needed for a long time, specifically at the forward spot.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of I've spent a lot of the beginning of this season thinking about how De'Aaron Fox's start could impact his contract. I didn't think about it from Keegan's perspective. So yeah, definitely an interesting point there. But I mean, I agree with most of what you said about Keegan. I think that he's kind of just being asked to do a lot. And I think that was also the case of why we saw his 3-point shooting take a dip last season, because he was asked to do so much on the defensive end, and he's rebounding the ball really well. Offensive rebounding, you mentioned this, but offensive rebounding has been a big point of emphasis coming into the season. Domas is averaging 3.1 offensive rebounds a game. That's kind of just what he does. Keegan's averaging 2.3, and the next closest is De'Aaron with just over 1. So Keegan is the only guy, honestly, that I really realized that's made me feel the emphasis in offensive rebounding throughout the course of this season. It feels like he does all the little things. And I think as they maybe are able to get a little bit more roster balance, combined with Keegan just getting more mature and used to this role, mature when it comes to his game. I mean, I think that 3 will start to go down. This guy was getting praise league wide for what he did his rookie season. And I don't think that that's just a fluke. I think that Keegan is legitimately one of the best shooters he's in the upper echelon in the league. And I think that will still come back around. And, Buddy Hield may be on a different level at this point. I don't know if you've seen Buddy Hield's kind of going crazy over there in Golden State. But another guy really feeling himself from 3 right now is the Kings' De'Aaron Fox. He is taking the most threes on the team, 6.7 per game and 29.8%. I will say he's averaging 24 a game on 48% from the field. That's really not bad total efficiency. Turnovers have been up for him, and I think a little bit of an issue. But just to go game by game 3-point percentage a little bit, right? Or yeah, let's just run it through. 1 of 4, 3 of 10, 2 of 8, 1 of 2, 4 of 6. There's an 0 of 11 against Toronto, and then 3 of 6 against Miami. I kind of had conversations with people about what his shot selection could look like this season. And I think the idea was getting him back to the paint a little bit more, where that's really his superpower. Fox, one of the fastest guys in the league, acceleration, deceleration, just ability to get to the rim and finish when he's there. But maybe fell in love with the 3 a little bit last year. And I thought that was just part of the learning process as he became a good shooter. It seems like it's stuck around a little bit though this year. Have you felt that a little bit with Fox's 3s?
Like he's settling instead of driving.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I do, but I think a lot of that too, and I don't think it's something that he's said verbatim, but I think that something that we've seen De'Aaron Fox, what it takes to go in there and drive into the paint and kind of climb amongst the trees and try to get to the foul line. Because before DeMar DeRozan, De'Aaron Fox was the Kings' go-to guy for someone who has to get to the foul line. And we know that De'Aaron Fox, it's been pretty publicized that the struggles he's had from the free throw line, I think last year was a career high 86%, or this year, 86%. Last year, 73. Year before that was a career high 78. He's a 73% free throw shooter for his career. So we're talking about a guy who gets to the line 5+ times a game, but 73% is not going to cut it. And I think that while he's cutting down on it a little bit, we saw the 3-point shot last year was incredible. And maybe that was an outlier, 37% on, I think it was a 200 plus makes. He took 580 and made 214. I think he's one of 7 Kings to ever make 200 plus 3-pointers in a season. So this is something that I don't know if is going to be De'Aaron Fox for the entirety of his career, but we also talked about a lot, and I don't know if you and I have at length, but a lot of people have kind of mentioned, since Fox was a rookie, how is he going to age in the NBA? And he's still pretty young. He's 26 years old. He'll be 27, I think, in a couple weeks. but the Mike Conley comp has been constant with him. And I think that Fox is way more explosive than Mike Conley ever was. But I think a lot of people are looking at Mike Conley where he is now, like age 35, 36. Can that be what Fox can grow into? Can you be someone that can be a distributor that can knock down the three and, timely baskets, can be crafty, still get into the lane? Fox is doing that, but I think he's also being very protective of his health. And especially we know at a time where he's going to be looking to get that for Supermax. I don't think that's the reason why he's not driving the lane anymore, but I do think last year that success from three can kind of make you see, that green light a little brighter. And I don't know if that's going to continue the whole season or if it should, but it's been 7 games. I think that, 29%. We just talked about Keegan Murray, who Fox was a better 3-point shooter than Keegan Murray last year. If the numbers tell us that he was, is he a better shooter from a talent standpoint? Probably not. But I'm not going to look at the first 7 games and see both these guys struggling and think that one of them needs to stop or shy up. But I will say that having DeMar DeRozan in the fold does make me kind of want to see Fox be a little more aggressive in driving into the paint, because having 2 players that possess that ability just really, I don't know how many other teams in the NBA can do that. I mean, Dallas has Kyrie and Luka that can both get into the paint, get to the foul line, but there really are, maybe a handful of teams that have 2 players that can demand the opposing defense's attention and draw fouls and get to the foul line at a high rate. But I'm not all that worried yet about Fox's 3-point shooting. I think if we get into January and he's shooting 32%, 31%, and it's a high volume. Right now he's at how many attempts per game? Right now he is at
6.7.
6.7. I mean, 6.7 or 7 attempts per game. He's shooting 31% in January. Maybe time to switch things up a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think it kind of peaked at that 0 of 11 game in Toronto, but I mean, to be honest, everybody just looked tired in that game. I thought they were just throwing up pretty lazy shots. There was a lot of turnovers. I mean, I think that's probably the biggest thing about De'Aaron's start to the season is 4.1 turnovers per game. It's kind of crazy. He has a 6 turnover game, 2 6-turnover games, a 5 turnover game, and a 4 turnover game already in this season. So I think kind of just cleaning that up. On the other end, he's also getting steals. This is a guy that led the league in steals last game, but a 5-steal game, a 4-steal game, a couple with more than one. But I think as a whole, the team is taking less threes. And it seems like, that with DeMar obviously being the focal point of that, the mid-range just beast that he is, and that still being his game in the modern NBA, it seems like the other guys have obviously Keegan, Malik, and Kevin already fall into this, but De'Aaron and Domas are also taking more triples to account for more space. You're saying Domas shoot the ball more throughout the course of this season. He's taking 2.3 a game, and he's made half of them, by the way. So that's gone pretty well. But the Kings as a whole are only taking 34 threes a game. Not a horrible number, but about 21st in the league. And kind of crazy in a modern age where the Celtics are shooting 50 a game, by the way. I don't know that I had seen that number until right now. That's absolutely insane. And they have a big lead on second, which is Charlotte with 44. But there's 7 teams shooting at least 40. And the Kings are 21st shooting 34 a game. Do you have any concern of like sometimes it's going to be a little hard to keep up against some of these teams?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The Kings, they have a lot of shooters. And I think right now the DeMar addition has, and Sabonis scoring at a high rate. I think he's at 20 plus points per game right now. They really have been a better paint team early in the season, but I think as opposing defenses adjust and we see kind of the ups and downs and ebbs and flows of a season, they're going to have times where they're going to be taking 50 plus attempts per game as well. This is a team that really made a living on the free ball for sure in 2022, 2023, but even last year, I think they were top 7 in 3-point attempts or top 6 in 3-point field goal attempts and makes. This is a team, when you look at Fox, what he did last year, Herter, who's back in the starting lineup, and if he's healthy, he's going to get his shots up. Keegan Murray, DeRozan probably won't take too many threes. I mean, he's taken more over the past couple of years than before, but that's just the way the NBA's evolved. A lot of these teams now just they live and die by the 3. I don't know if it's gonna be hard for the Kings to keep up, but I think that getting guys to be in a rhythm, because like we mentioned, the Kings right now, I think they're 27th or what, I can't remember what I said, 27th or 20. What I have 26 in 3-point field goal percentage. They're near the bottom of the NBA in 3-point field goal percentage, maybe 23rd.
24th.
They climbed to 24th last night because they actually had a pretty decent night. I think they were 37% last night, but going into last night, they were, I think, 28th or 29th. So they have too many good shooters to be at the bottom of the league. I think if I had to put a, just random prediction out there, I'd say they'll be a top 10 3-point shooting team as far as percentages go and as far as, volume goes. But there are better shooting teams in the NBA, sure. But I think what makes this Kings team so unique is they don't have to just live and die by the three as much as they used to, because now they do have DeMar DeRozan. They have Malik Monk back, who can knock down the three. He was 35% last year, but someone who really is pretty good in the mid-range himself, and someone who can get to the basket. So will they be the best three-point shooting team in the league? No, but they're going to be fine.
I think the same. I don't think they'll be on par with, obviously, Boston. I think will be in a tier of their own, but even like Golden State, Minnesota getting up a ridiculous amount of threes. I think the Kings will just be like one tier right below them.
Okay, Buddy Hield has been the reason why Golden State has been going. Just
Buddy Hield is balling.
Like Buddy Hield's going
earlier. He's balling.
Is that sustainable though? Is that really sustainable?
So let me pull up the numbers again, because I know the numbers are absolutely ridiculous, and the obvious answer is no. But there's an aspect that's a yes in my mind. He's 50% from three on 9.4 a game. That is stupid and obviously not sustainable. He's 33 of 66 through 7 games. Whoa. The new Splash Brother. Sustainable shooting, but I do think he fits really well. Like the new Splash Brother thing, like I understand the joke, but like there's something there that is real. I mean, the catch and shoot looks that Clay got, you do kind of just plug and play Buddy. I do think that I keep telling my dad's a huge Warriors fan. And I told him early, you're going to be excited at first. And then there's going to be a couple moments in the year where you're like, God damn. And he's going to dribble the ball off his foot on a big possession. He's going to take a shot where you're like, why would you do that? And I just feel like we're at the early part of the process in the typical Buddy Hield circle. We saw it when he first went to Indiana. I hate to be that guy. I do think there's some sustainability here, but it's going to cool off.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think it's like a 4 or 5 step like Buddy Hield cycle. I think they're in step 1 right now. And I think by the time the holidays roll around, like Christmas, they'll probably be in step 2 or 3, which is like, getting near the frustrated aspect of Buddy Hield. He's one of the best shooters. I'm going to say something out. I mean, obviously he's one of the best 3-point shooters that the game has seen. I mean, we're at the point now where the guy is shooting 40% for his career. He's been playing for a decade, and he'll hit the 2,000 mark with 3-pointers this year. I'm not sure if that is all time, but we know he's the Kings all-time 3-point shooter. So I know there's a lot of jokes about Buddy, and, I think a lot are warranted, and the way he left Sacramento definitely let the lost sour taste in people's mouths. But yeah, if I'm gonna be serious, I think that he has been kind of an ideal, because Buddy Hield at his best. Like Buddy Hield, how he's playing, how he did when he was in Sacramento in like 2018-19 when he averaged 20
Jaeger,
points.
The 39 win season or something like that.
Yeah, he averaged. I mean, I don't know why I'm gonna guess. I have it right here. That year he averaged a career high 20.7 points per game. He shot 43% from three on 7.9 attempts per game. So this is he's taking 9.4 right now. It's been 7 games, but he's kind of, I feel, a little bit less pressure, and someone who had a problem with coming off the bench for his entire career to this point, I think. And he definitely was outward, he would criticize coaching when he was here about how he wanted to start. I do think that the fact that he's in Golden State and probably maybe saying that, okay, maybe coming off the bench behind Stephen Curry and for Steve Kerr, checked his ego a little bit. But I have a lot of Warrior fans friends too, and they're telling me that Buddy Hield is he's the answer to the Warriors becoming a threat again in the Western Conference, which is crazy. But
I have the same people in my ear. Who was it that, I don't know why this triggered a memory, but Luke Walton started somebody over Buddy. It was weirdly, I remember it was against the Bulls. I want to say on the road against Chicago. Was it Tyrese that he eventually started over Buddy?
It was Tyrese.
That's what caused all that?
Yeah, it was Tyrese who would start, but then they started messing with that lineup. I think at that time, which is so funny, we call it like the death lineup right now, which is Fox, Malik, DeMar, Keegan, and Sabonis. I think the death lineup back then was Fox, Tyrese, Buddy Hield, Rashawn Holmes, and I can't remember.
It might be Marvin, dude.
It might have been. I think it was Marvin.
The Jaeger year, Marvin was good.
Marvin.
Oh God, we're on a tangent here.
We're reminiscing now, which is fine. But like, I do think Marvin, if things, I don't know, this is what ifs. I don't think we can sit here and say that he doesn't have the talent. Like, I think he had talent. It's just like the guy's ego was out. It was crazy, crazy
I
ego.
agree.
I haven't seen anything like it. I mean, we've been covering the team for years now. I really haven't seen anything like it. Marvin's ego on anyone else here. I mean, that from players that can't back it up. Like, I think De'Aaron has like a healthy-ish ego. I mean, people might disagree with that, but I think that he can definitely back it up. He has a talent.
There's a difference between confidence and cocky.
Yeah. Marvin was entitled from the moment he came into the NBA. And Buddy Hield also was entitled from the moment he got to Sacramento. And he said that during his extension talks, that this is Sacramento. Like, who wants to be here? Things have changed a little bit. DeMar DeRozan decided to come here.
But he said that?
It was the day of the Sac Republic MLS announcement. I was working for the Republic at the time too. Kind of a bummer of a day now looking back, but it was kind of we were at City Hall, which is the bar by Golden One Center. Yep. And while we were in line, Dave actually broke it. Carmichael Dave was the one that had the news that Buddy signed that like 4 year, $72 million extension. But the day before that, there was a game and he told the media, and I wasn't media at the time, but I saw it, that, hey man, like I want to be here. Like it was like the first week of October. So there was like it was the deadline to sign an extension, I think. And he said that no one else wants to be here. Like, who else signed an extension to be here? Like outside of Boogie. Like he wanted to be there because of the money, which is the reason why.
Which, to be fair, with like that question was a fair statement at the time.
I mean, yeah, the Kings were not good. I mean, what was this, 2018, I think? So they were very, or 2019, they were bad. Like, no questions, they were bad. But from the minute he's in that deal, he's became entitled. And I guess it's kind of, I mean, we can kind of, I do think we can kind of transition that into like maybe last night's report they said last night they had to have a heated discussion at halftime in Miami. I think that's the point. There's not any guys on this team right now that have that toxic, cloud hanging over them. And that's something that I think a lot of players the Kings have had over the years have had. And halftime talks really would not be very constructive, or post-game talks or players-only meetings. They have veterans in the locker room now. They have DeMar DeRozan, who I don't know how many players you can find in the league that have more experience than him. Domantas Sabonis, who is really a very outspoken player. You have De'Aaron, who I think a lot of people criticize and say he's not very outspoken, but he speaks up when he needs to. I mean, we've heard a couple of times that he will speak up when he needs to speak up. But last night, I think Domas said in the postgame that things got heated at halftime. They were getting beat pretty bad. They're down by as many 15 points. They come out in the second half, third quarter. They outscored the Heat 37-17. They shoot 68% from the field. Hold Miami 30% shooting. That's something that wasn't there to put the Buddy and Marvin talk to rest. That's why this team is so different, and why the culture of this franchise has shifted so much, and why having guys that are not inexperienced or young players that are coming in, thinking that they deserve to be, option 1A and deserve to start or whatever. They're guys that are coming in that they know their jobs. And we saw last night in the second half, the elements that make these players so great. Malik coming in and being a spark plug off the bench. That happened in the third quarter. Domantas Sabonis continuing to not give up on plays and get boards and be a presence and set screens. That happened. Freeing up teammates like De'Aaron Fox and DeMar DeRozan. DeRozan being clutch down the stretch. These are things we saw that kind of flipped the switch in the second half that we haven't seen in years past, which is why, Brenden, in closing, because I'm ranting here, this team is so much different now. And I think that I'm not going to sit here and say a 4-3 start is why people should feel this team's going to be in the playoffs or be going to win a playoff series the first time since 2004. But they have the talent and they have the pedigree now to look at a situation like last night in Miami, where they were 5-31 all time, haven't won a game in 6 years, and they find a way to come back from 15 down. This just doesn't happen. That hasn't happened at least in my experience watching the Kings for a long time. Back when I was a fan, working for the team, whatever. That's a game that they lose, 99 times out of 100.
I think so too. I mean, the inspirational, I guess you want to call it, speech at halftime. Miami went on a 13-1 run to end the half, and then they were up by 13. So it was a 1-point game, and then Miami goes on a 13-1 run, and it's like, what's going on here? And it feels like a big emphasis has been trying to put teams away in that third quarter, which, if you'll remember, was kind of a staple Warrior thing when they were really good, and Mike Brown was still on that roster. And that's definitely crossed my mind a couple times as this has been going on. But it's something they talked about after the Minnesota game and on opening night, that they wanted to come out and put them away in that third quarter. And obviously they were unsuccessful in doing so. But since then, it feels like they've been trying to do that in these games. And the Miami one, it was less putting them away and obviously coming back more so. At one point, it was at least a 17-2 run I kind of have here in my notes. And they gave himself an opportunity to win that game. Jimmy ends up scoring the first 10 points of overtime, and they kind of have it back and forth as typical. But I think the team looked good. And I think that they look like they have some fight in them for sure. Domas's game winner after getting beat up and hit in the head a couple times over. He's got a busted lip. And for DeMar and Malik to both run over and like to see their excitement about him having just hit it, even though, by the way, Miami could have like inbounded the ball right there while these guys are just celebrating, kind of crossed my mind a little.
Fox got, I watched the replay back, Fox was like running back, like immediately sprinting back. And he was there for, they call a timeout, but there still was like a pass, an outlet pass up the court. Fox was the only one that was kind of like down the floor. Everybody else was, but it's cool. Like and that was something I think he put on Twitter too, that it's cool to see those guys and that chemistry already kind of starting to develop. And a guy like DeMar DeRozan, who he doesn't have a championship. He doesn't, he's 35 years old. He's on the back nine of his career. Doesn't look like he's slowing down at all, to be fair. But someone who chose to be here, not, I think, to collect a paycheck, which a lot of people look at it and say, okay, well, DeMar picked the Kings because they were offering the most. I don't think that really matters at this point. I think DeMar DeRozan's made hundreds of millions of dollars in his career. He could have gone to the Lakers on a minimum deal. He could have gone to Miami on a team-friendly deal.
If he thought this team sucked, the money would have not been enough.
Oh, for sure. I mean, he's going to sign with the Sacramento Kings just to collect $25 million and then just call it a career. No,
the Pistons probably could have offered him the same thing. It's not happening,
100%. So I think to your point, it's very, very cool to see that these guys, some of the best players in the league, De'Aaron Fox, Sabonis, DeMar DeRozan, Malik Monk, like these guys are already kind of building that chemistry and coming up huge in a situation that, like I said, that they would lose 99.9% of the time. They would not win that game in recent years.
Yeah, I think the same thing. What else has stood out to you? Is there anything else that you kind of want to highlight before we start wrapping this one up?
I mean, I'm looking at the fact that it feels like the Kings, and someone on Twitter said last night, are the Kings ever going to play a home game? And it does feel like they've been on the road for a long time. And I think that, I don't know if they even have a home heavy schedule coming up. I know that they have Toronto, they have a chance at redemption tomorrow. Davion Mitchell return tomorrow night. Clippers, they do have a lot of home games coming up.
Davion played great, by the way. Like he looked, Fox almost had an off night. I'm just saying.
Davion gave him an off night?
Almost. Like Fox came back later in that game and, had his moments, but Davion was forcing some turnovers for sure.
And they have I think it helps. They have the most experience that Davion has probably defending anyone at the NBA level is Fox in practice. I mean, they for 3 years defended each other every day. But tomorrow, do you expect he gets an ovation or
No, I think he'll get booed a little bit, to be honest. I mean, I don't think he deserves it. Like, just to be clear, I think that's just the nature of a fan base. Like, I think there will be light. Well, maybe I'm crazy, actually.
I think there's going to be
I think it's going to be both. Is all. Like
let's Harrison Barnes, when they come back December 1st. When the Spurs come back,
cheered.
He's going to get an ovation. I think people are going to.
Yeah.
For what reason do people have to boo Harrison Barnes? I mean, I know that someone out there is screaming because he didn't show up and he would.
I mean, I guess that's my logic with Davion too, though, is that like there's going to be some boos for everybody that returns, right?
How I look at it is, it's not his fault, really. I mean, I don't think the Kings should have taken him as a top 10 pick, and they did. And I think that the way that he's performed pretty much aligns with his mid-lottery 20-ish range selection. I think that's where he should have gone. As great as Monty's been making draft picks, I think that was maybe his biggest hiccup, I guess. But I don't know. I mean, Rudy Gay got booed, actually, for whatever reason when he came back after he left in free agency. When I think even everyone knew the door was closing in that relationship, he got booed. Buddy Hield gets booed, warranted. Tyrese Halliburton got a pretty big ovation when he came back, which I think is fine. He didn't want to leave. He was very outspoken about wanting to be here.
Since it's been a little mixed.
Yeah, it's pretty mixed now because I think a lot of and I'm not really you know, I don't really have, I guess, an opinion on that anymore. I think that it's worked out great for both sides, but I do think it's a little interesting how it's kind of gone more to booze as of late.
Yeah.
But then again, he hasn't played here in, I think, 2 years now. He missed last year when they beat the Kings at home. So I don't know. I think if I had to give it on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like I don't know. Who came back? They got a massive ovation already. Do we know anyone that came back? They got a big ovation. I don't
No,
know.
I mean, most I can think of is guys that like sit courtside, like
Okay,
Weber shows up, like
if 10 is Chris Webber and
right.
0 is Spencer Hawes when he came back, because I mean, I don't know if you're up to date on why Kings fans hate Spencer Hawes. Do you know why Kings fans hated Spencer Hawes back
It's
in the day?
something with the Sonics
Yeah, he's from Washington. He's from Seattle, and while he was playing for the Kings, he was like wearing a Sonics
or the
hat,
hat.
and
Okay.
he was like
James
super
John
down.
do I wanna say James Johnson did something similar?
James Johnson did the same thing.
Okay, okay.
Those guys get booed. So if 0 is that and 10 is Chris Webber, I would say Davion's going to be like probably at a 3 or 4. It'll be like a
Yeah.
very mix of like kind of claps and like woo. It'll be kind of normal. But HB is going to get like a 7 or an 8, I think. I think people are going to rise to their feet for HB.
Yeah.
You don't think
I
so?
hope so. I hope so. I hope so.
How can you hate that guy? Everything he did
No,
for
I
the,
agree. I think
not
fans,
you, not
like, are
you.
just gonna fan, like
Chris Watkins
I
is going to boo. Chris Watkins is going to be booing Harrison Barnes. I
but the thing
guarantee it.
is, there are more Chris Watkins out there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
But but having DeMar DeRozan on this roster kind of makes me like, it puts things in perspective, really. Just Harrison Barnes is not that guy. I mean, not many people are. And that's not a knock on Harrison Barnes, but it's hard to be someone that can go out there and get you 20, 25 plus a night. HB, some nights, yeah, he didn't show up, especially on the boards or whatever, but I mean, he was always reliable. I don't think he ever missed a game with the Kings. He was a good 3-point shooter for his
yeah.
career. I mean, he was great in the community. The Kings, I mean, I will say that, okay, I almost said that he did nothing really horrible that's still holding true, but if he makes that shot in game
No,
3,
no, 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 no. I mean, like, you make and miss shots. It's just the nature of the
I
league,
know, but I feel,
Listen
but
to how
imagine,
De'Aaron talks about Harrison Barnes. I think is all any
oh, for
fan
sure.
needs to do, and
All
like,
I'm
it's
saying is,
clear what he's meant to this work.
if he makes that shot in game 3, though, I think that the fan base universally, there's no one that's
Yeah,
anti Harrison Barnes. Like, if he makes that shot in game 3, he's a legend forever in Sacramento. And I think he
for
still is,
sure.
to be fair. I think he's going to be remembered fondly for a long time here. I think he
To be
really
blunt, I
played
think his
well.
whole legacy is kind of different because he's also tied to the Warriors a lot,
Yeah,
and like,
that was really his chance
but that was quite a shot.
that was really his chance. And it happens in sports. He's not the first. You know, Aaron Judge dropped the fly ball in the World Series last week, and they lost the game
We haven't
because of
talked
it.
about this, Frank. Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
want to talk about it. I'm
Garrett Cole
just
should have ran
saying.
a first, right?
Yes, I think it's more on Garrett Cole, but I think that Anthony Rizzo should have charged that ground ball a little bit
Yeah.
too. Even if a little like, oh, they're gonna get close. Just there was no effort from either side, really. I mean, and a lot of first basemen have been looking at that play and said, the amount of spin that's on that ball, you don't know what it's like to come at it from that angle. And okay, sure. I never played first base. I never played first base in the major leagues, but the ball was hit at 50 miles per hour. And Rizzo just kind of stood
Was
there
it
and waited
really?
for it. Yeah,
Oh,
51 miles per hour. It's been
I'm sorry,
agonizing.
Frank.
Do you know what I did though to get over it? The Red Sox documentary came out on Netflix.
Did you watch that already?
I watched it to punish
Okay.
myself, but actually it was
Why
really
would you
enjoyable
do that?
because it keeps coming on my Netflix feed, and it's like, let's get out of the way. I want to get this out of my queue. Let's just watch it. Let's move on. Let's just punch me in the face with everything that you can do. And everyone that wants to drink Yankee tears, that's fine. Drink the Yankee tears. Juan Soto going to probably go to the Mets. It's fine. But
No.
all I'm saying is people have their moments and it can change their legacies forever. And I think HB would have been a Kings legend if he made that shot. But even if he didn't, he's still a very good player. And he deserves, to me, he deserves some love when he returns. Davion, I don't know. But don't ask me more Yankees questions, please.
I agree. I'm glad that we somehow brought up Marvin Bagley. We talked about Buddy for a while. Dave Yeager and Luke Walton both got a shout out, and we talked about the Yankees blunders in that 7th inning, I believe it was.
It was the fifth. It was the fifth
Fifth,
inning. It was
fifth, that's right.
5-0 with 2
Yeah.
outs. 2 outs. Yep.
Yeah.
Some are calling it the worst inning in World Series history.
To be fair, the entire time I'm watching, I'm thinking about your reaction, and all year you've been like unsurprised when the Yankees have errors defensively, and I just imagined the same reaction.
Yeah, a lot of people are stunned, and like the Dodgers weren't surprised. Like they've had guys come out and say, I think Joe Kelly, one of their relievers, said the other day that we knew they're a horrible defensive team. Like we knew that already. Like put the ball in play, let them ruin it themselves. That's pretty horrible. It's pretty crazy. But look, as a sports fan, your team makes it to the final. You're one of the final 2 teams standing. It was a fun year overall. I'm not going to sit here and act like I didn't enjoy the hell out of it, but I'm happy now. Like I told you, we were on the phone the other day. It really was kind of taking me out of the Kings a little bit as far as like first of all, my job, like hopefully no one's listening, it's important, but yeah, my job is hard to focus. It's hard to focus on, we're at the game there a couple nights ago and I got Matt George chirping in my ear. I got everyone chirping at me because the Yankees are losing game 3 of the World Series. Like I'm able to put that in the rear view now. We're able to focus on the Kings. We'll hop on every Tuesday and talk about what we saw. And I'll go to therapy and I'll get over that World Series loss and be ready to go for spring training. So it's a circle of life.
There you go. And eventually you will get to see them play against the homeless A's, I guess. Homeless is the wrong way to say that, but like
ATH, ATH, ATH is their new abbreviation. So that's
just
cool.
The athletics, they could be from anywhere. They're just athletes.
They are the athletic players, athletics, the A's. Yeah. They will be in
the right
West Sacramento. Yeah. We'll probably be out there a lot. We'll probably be out there. I'll be out there for every, Yankee game for sure.
Yeah.
So I can watch them make a bunch of errors at the Tower Bridge in the background. That'll be really beautiful.
Absolutely. But hopefully you still got plenty of promising and good Sacramento Kings basketball coming up. Like you mentioned, Toronto Wednesday, Clippers Friday, both of those home games. You get a little road trip against, quick one, back-to-back against Phoenix and San Antonio before a 4-game homestand as well. Still early in this 24-25 season. Appreciate everybody tuning in. And definitely take a look at, we got shows going on Sactown Sports 1140 from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Also plenty of content surrounding those shows and different stuff that we do on our YouTube page and at sactownsports.com. So be sure to check that out. Don't listen to any Drake, just stay loyal to DeMar DeRozan here, who Drake just acting a little crazy right now and making it about himself, but no big deal. Shout out Vince Carter and appreciate everybody tuning in. You will hear from us again on the Return of the Roar podcast next week. So thanks everybody for listening and hope everybody is good. Talk to y'all later.